Test, test, test. Test, test. We're testing our live stream. We're still working out the technical. Yes. The little dongles inside. My internet is being very slow. Do you want me to talk? For those of us who are just joining us online, we're working through a few technical difficulties and we'll get started momentarily. For any of our friends joining us online, we are working through a few technical difficulties and we will start momentarily. Once again, for our friends joining us online, we are working through a few technical difficulties and awaiting some of our participants to arrive, and we'll get started momentarily. Still wasn't incredibly loud, but I don't know the are you recording it too? Is what it is. It's not amplifying in the room, it's just online. It is. Pushed all the way up is on. It's not amplifying anything here, it's just going online. It's the online stream that's the. No, it's working. It's just being very quiet.
So does everyone promise not to walk over this cord if I move this thing? Megan? Yeah, go for it. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight to hear a little bit more about Free Horizons facilities considerations, specifically the Pleasant View campus opportunity. As you know, we shared out at the State of the School meeting on the 27th of April that this was a new prospect for Free Horizon, and so we wanted to give the community an opportunity to come together, learn a little bit more about the data that we've gathered so far, and ask any questions that you have as you've evaluated your own consideration of this opportunity. So again, welcome. Just want to set a little framework so that you have an idea of what I'm hoping that you come away with tonight, and you can keep me to task. So at the end of this, if I've missed anything, call me out on it. Tonight we hope you'll leave with knowledge of Free Horizons Facilities Master Plan, so you can kind of contextualize the Pleasant View opportunity and understand how it is that we came to pursue this opportunity and how it fits in our long-range vision. Also, a general awareness of the site itself, facts about the site decision-making process and the players, the leadership groups in that, and then all the answers to the major questions that have come up so far, as well as any that you might have. So the agenda, again, our facilities master vision and history, overview of Pleasant View, comparison of Pleasant View against the facilities master plan criterion, as well as comparison against the Free Horizon current campus, our next steps in pursuit of this opportunity, acknowledging the unknowns. There are quite a few things that we know that we want to know, but we don't yet know. And so just sort of owning that and being able to speak to that and understand we've got additional due diligence yet to do. I'll address the questions that I received in advance of tonight, and then we'll have an open forum for you guys to ask any other questions that haven't yet been covered. Cool? Little groundwork just to make sure we've got some shared meeting norms and understanding of the rules of engagement tonight. So I'd ask that you honor differing opinions and perspectives, that we allow for all to participate and respect our shared time together. Ask genuine questions and to be forthright and constructive in your approach, to listen to hear and to understand, not just to respond. We commit to transparency in the information that we share, and we need to acknowledge and accept that there are still unknowns that we've yet to discover. All right, so the facilities vision, and this has been the vision that really started with Free Horizon when it was chartered in 2002 and has followed us and actually helped guide us as we've pursued the different facilities that the school has had and the continued improvements that we make in those facilities. So really, our facilities master plan calls for a site that provides an optimal educational adequacy. And there are different guidance documents that help define and really set parameters around what that is. And so there's the Jefferson County Public Schools District document that has specific guidelines and parameters on how big classrooms are and what sort of shared specialized spaces there should be, number of toilets, safety considerations, those types of things. And so that's something that frames decisions that we make for the facilities, as well as the internationally recognized Montessori standards and sort of their idealized spaces. And then that's another filter that we overlay with facilities decisions that we make. Speaking to general classrooms, specialized spaces, gym, auditorium, kitchen, cafeteria, outdoor learning environments, recreation spaces, specialized classrooms that are built for their specialized purpose. Having adequate support service spaces, and then conference room storage, all of the other things that are really needed kind of behind the scenes to make sure that the school works well. A site that realizes our Montessori prepared environment potential, and that controls our annual and long-range operating and capital renewal costs. So not only does it need to be an adequate, comfortable, and safe space, but it also needs to be an affordable space that fits within our financial models for the long-term viability and health of the school. So again, to kind of contextualize how we got to this point, Free Horizon, chartered in 2002, started in the Applewood Strip Mall over at 20th and Youngfield and resided there for just over 3 years. Ultimately, that was a rented space, and the school was both outgrowing the space as well as outgrowing the cost of the space, and that's the point at which they engaged a broker to help them identify a longer-term permanent facility. They vetted a number of different properties in the area and ultimately landed on 581 as the best opportunity for the school at that time. So the school moved in, did some renovations and retrofit to make it a school, and then was under a lease at that point. That was a pretty steep escalation of the lease, and so ultimately in 2010, the board and the building corporation decided to purchase the building. So they did so, and at that time also rolled in a construction loan that allowed the school to do some more interior finishes and also build the upper elementary school wing. So all that was about a $6.5 million bond in order to both purchase the building and the land, as well as the additional 2 acres that we have yet undeveloped, and also do the construction. We're still in that bond. We're 7 years in and have 13 years yet before we would have the building paid off in its entirety. That's to the tune of about $500,000 a year that the school currently pays for use of this facility. We lease it back from the building corporation. So in 2014, we did the best grant improvements. About $1 million came into improvements there for the roof and the HVAC, electrical, some site work. Solar array, as you know, we put in through the power purchase agreement in 2015. And then we did some extreme due diligence and efforts in the summer and fall of 2016 to try and refinance our current bond. The market at that point had historically low bond exempt or tax exempt bond rates and looked to be a really great opportunity for us to lower our debt service. And so we dug really deep and queued up to get that to happen. And then come November and the general election, the bond market did some really wacky things, and it no longer became a viable financial model for us to move forward with that. So we sort of stepped back and regrouped and continued forward with enhancements here, continuing on with the learning landscape and playground design work. And then come January of 2017, the Jeffco Board of Education voted to close Pleasant View at their late January meeting. And this is actually something that they had been evaluating for a number of years, and Pleasant View had been on the consideration list, primarily due to its low enrollment. It's a neighborhood with changing demographic, older families that no longer have school-aged children. So ultimately their enrollment just wasn't adequate for the district to justify having that large of a facility with that low of an enrollment. So that brings us basically to the present state, which is when we decided that that would be an opportunity that made sense for Free Horizon to start to evaluate. So shortly thereafter, in late February, early March, the FHM Board of Directors started to, in earnest, evaluate what this might look like for us to pursue. Pleasant View, it's in unincorporated Jeffco, so even though it has a golden mailing address, is actually an independent campus there, or independent municipality, and is overseen directly by Jefferson County. It's about a mile and a half, just shy of a mile and a half down Colfax from us, under I-70, over to the north there, right behind the Planet Honda kind of car complex there. It's in an older residential area, nice and nestled off of Colfax. Like I said, it was voted by the Board of Education in January to close due to their chronically low and waning enrollment. You see here, this picture is sort of the front elevation driving up to the front door of the facility, and this is an aerial shot showing the main building here, the side wing, little courtyard, and its 2 playground areas and athletic field. So you guys can go drive by and check it out, in person yourself, should you be interested. So campus consideration. This is really speaking to some of the major areas of evaluation for Free Horizons Facilities Master Plan considerations, and then how our current campus stacks up against Pleasant View as it currently is. So total square footage here at the 581 Conference Place site, we are just shy of 35,000 square foot. The original building was about 30,000 square feet, and the addition that we did in 2010 was just shy of 6,000. We do have 2 modulars that are right around 1,400 square foot total. Pleasant View is just over 51,000 square feet. Total site acreage, so that's our standard footprint, as well as the undeveloped contiguous lot, is just shy of 5 acres here, and almost 6.7 acres at the Pleasant View site. Our original building was constructed in 1988, and the wing added in 2010. Pleasant View's primary footprint was constructed in the 50s and 60s, with substantial addition added in 1995, and then they also did an overhaul renovation in 2001, as well as some substantial upgrades in 2013 and 2015. Number of classrooms, we've got 16 here, and that includes the 3 that are dedicated to middle school. There are 20 independent classrooms at the Pleasant View campus, not including the specials classrooms, so just the standard primary classrooms. Gymnasium, that's a biggie for us and has been at the very top end of our short list for a long time. You're sitting in it. We've got 1,400 square feet here in our sort of flex classroom gym space at the Pleasant View campus. It's a 3,300 square foot dedicated, gym with basketball goals dropped from the ceiling, and hard floor with the markings and all of the things that you would expect in a traditional gymnasium site. Cafeteria. We've got our 1,300 foot Fox Cafe, including our sort of galley kitchen there. Pleasant View has a dedicated just over 2,000 square foot student dining area. That's kind of your more traditional area that you'd be used to finding in a standard elementary school. Commercial kitchen, we have none. Pleasant View has a 1,700 square foot outfitted with ovens and fridges and walk-ins and all of those types of things. Library, currently housed in our modular building. Pleasant View has a almost 2,300 square foot library and media center. It's a big, expansive space, right? When you walk into the school with a nice kind of reading nook over in the corner for book clubs and that type of thing. Music room, here we're just shy of 600 square feet. At Pleasant View, it's 1,300 square foot. It's got built-in risers for kind of rehearsal, choral type activities. Art studio here, also just over 500. Pleasant View has just shy of 1,200. It has a kiln, just like we do here, but it's actually an interior kiln, so it's accessible right off of the art studio. Computer lab, also housed in our temp building here. Pleasant View has a dedicated almost 900 square foot computer lab. No performance stage here. That's also been top of our list for quite some time. Pleasant View has an area that allows for sort of a raised stage that's between where the student dining area is and the lower gymnasium, so that partition opens, and then you've got sort of an insta stage there, and it's intended for that use. And then Pleasant View also has sufficient number of rooms that we anticipate, were we to move forward with that, we would be able to have dedicated spaces for the before and after care programs, and they wouldn't be sort of the transient programs that they are here, the nomadic programs. Yeah, yay for aftercare. Okay. So that kind of gives you the particulars and the specifics. Our next steps, we have engaged with a commercial appraiser to do an evaluation of the amount that they believe we could command for sale of this facility. So that gives us a better understanding of if we wanted to pursue sale of the current campus, what that could realize for us on the commercial market, potentially to a different type of user or potentially to another school. So we've just engaged with them and hope to have some specific data on that within the coming weeks. That also gives us data that we can go forward and discuss and have negotiations with the district, so we've got a better idea of what really we have to work with and play with in that regard. In that context, we are vetting multiple financial scenarios and getting a better understanding of some of the opportunities and restrictions under our current bond. So we really understand how we can move forward and what, again, is in the best sort of financial interests of the school. Right now, there are 7, 8 different unique scenarios that we're vetting that range from everything from an immediate sale of the current facility up through maybe a long-term lease or sublease of the existing facility and lease of Pleasant View, kind of anything and everything in between. So running the numbers on each of those different scenarios and understanding, again, what the opportunities are within our bond and what interest there may be from buyers. And then being able to understand what might be most attractive to the district, so we understand sort of how we can meet in the middle if that's ultimately what ends up happening. Additional Pleasant View due diligence. So just like you would do if you were purchasing a home, you get an inspection. You understand all of the warts. You understand all of the assets. You understand the investments that you would want to make. Does it have a pink sink that you want to rip out because you just can't stand it, versus something that is functional but you can, looking at you, Lisa, something that you can live with. And so obviously we understand that there are going to be both. There are going to be things that are attractive and we're excited, and there are going to be some things that we would want to address. And so doing our due diligence to really understand and be able to identify and quantify what that looks like. Negotiation with DEFCO. So as soon as we've got our appraisal back, we will more formally engage with them to understand what their sort of ideal scenario are and what we can offer in that regard, and be able to negotiate on some of those things that may need to be addressed at Pleasant View. We've got our stone landscape architects who have been very patient with me as I sort of threw them a curveball to say, you guys are awesome. Could you just sit tight in the short term, because it may be that the design work you've started is adapted and applied to a whole different site. So after they sort of picked their jaw up off the ground, they said, all right, cool. This is something we're willing and eager and excited to work with. So right now they are just sitting tight. They've got our data on sort of the conceptual preferences from the community, and now they're waiting for us to give them some additional guidance and likelihood on which site they would apply that to, because we do intend to make those same types of enhancements and improvements at the Pleasant View site if that's ultimately the direction that the school goes. It's got a lovely outdoor facility, but we would want it really elevated to realize that outdoor learning space and that nature play yard feel that we have idealized for the current campus. And then connecting with the Pleasant View community. We're all aware and understand that the loss of this school has got to be a very difficult thing for those families, and to understand that that's been a central nucleus of their community for many years. And so when the time is right, being able to engage meaningfully with them to ensure that they recognize and understand that as we come into that community, we really intend to be a part of that community and want to make those connections and relationships just like we have with all of our golden neighbors. So decision-making entities. This is a shared endeavor and a heavy lift for a lot of folks. So I just want to give you an idea of sort of how it breaks out, so you understand who's doing the data collection and evaluation, and any of these that you might be compelled to be a part of, you kind of know where to plug in. So FHM administration, this is more of the operational and programming considerations, the central management and layering of all of the different pieces and parts. The board of directors, they maintain that strategic evaluation, ensuring that the decisions that are made from a facility standpoint fit into the long-range vision and desires for the school. So both the facilities committee and the finance committee are standing committees of the board of directors. The facilities committee, they're the ones that really do the granular evaluation of the particulars of the site. So to make sure that any of the capital investments that are made for the school or that are pursued are done so with best practices for educational space and Montessori programming in mind. They also help sort of rank some of the decisions that are made within use of our resources. The Finance Committee, they're really tasked with doing the financial due diligence, so partnering very closely with the administration and with the board of directors to run those numbers and make sure that all of those scenarios, as they play out, make sense both short-term and long-term, and then to help advise on any of the findings or considerations that they come upon. The building corporation, they are the actual property owners of the site. So legally, we have to have sort of a separate entity hold the building. So they're the bond holders. They have the mortgage for the school. They're ultimately the ones that would do any of the real estate transactions. Basically, they lease the school back, they lease the building back to the school every year on an annual lease basis. So the school appropriates our base rents, and then the building corporation says, yep, great, you can stay here for another year. It's a bit of an artificial differentiation, but in order to keep the tax-exempt bond process on the up and up, that's how it's generally structured for all charter schools that own their own buildings. And so they would be the ones to ultimately transact a sale or a purchase if that's ultimately what we went with. And then obviously we're working closely, or will be working closely, with the district facilities and legals department to both do data gathering as well as conversation and negotiations about ultimate property disposition. Pulling in external experts and consultants to do the financial vetting and run the scenarios so that ultimately, if we need to pursue external funding and financing, we've got the ability to do so. D.A. Davidson is the bond underwriter who underwrote and facilitated the purchase in 2010. They're the ones that we worked with very closely to do the refinance last fall. So we've got a good and lasting long-term relationship with them. Pinnacle Real Estate Advisors, we've engaged to do the appraisal. They are actually also the one that did the appraisal of this site back in 2009 when the board was originally evaluating purchase of the site. So they've got good familiarity with us for quite some time and are eager to plug back in and sort of see what the current market states are. Our general counsel, Bill Bethke, and our bond counsel, Kutak Rock, will help us advise on the legal considerations. And then we've yet to engage, but anticipate needing to engage with a transactional broker and an owner's rep. And then also, as we are identifying some of the actual improvements and construction changes that might need to be made, all those specialized contractors, all of that would be done with the RFP and multiple solicited bid process in keeping with our board policy. So the unknowns, this is a short list that actually is really big. So timelines, this has been the thing that has come up again and again as something that people are most eager to understand. And believe me, that's the thing that I would love to know as well. Short answers, we don't know. It could be as early as this summer if we go forward. It could be as far out as a year. It could be somewhere in between. All of that is largely determinant on the district, and ultimately, if we go forward with negotiations, what that looks like and how quickly some of those deals can be closed, and ultimately what makes sense for the school programming so that we are setting up for success for next year and the long term, however that looks. So I promise you we will keep you apprised as we learn more, but right now, not much more to say than that. Financial transaction amounts. Obviously, people are pretty curious about what are we talking in terms of dollars. That's also an unknown. We don't know what we might be able to sell this building for if that's the course we take. We don't know what we would be able to purchase Pleasant View for if that's the course we take. We've got good belief that the commercial appetite and demand for this current facility is pretty strong for a variety of reasons. It's got the good I-70 frontage, it's got the good corporate location, it happens to be next door to another charter school. So we will find out more about that, but as yet don't know specifics. We don't know if there's possible interest here. We don't know if there's other possible interest for Pleasant View. We don't know what the full costs of Pleasant View's renovations would be, if any. We do have a pretty good idea based upon the data that the district has maintained about its investments and its kind of cataloged deficiencies, but us coming in and really being able to evaluate it in terms of what Free Horizons needs and desires would be there, we haven't yet quantified. And then also another biggie, any calendar or logistical changes, both from a contact days or a school calendar or a school drop-off and pickup times, those have yet to be determined too. There are a lot of variables that precede that before we can really get to the point where we have that understanding, but again, trust that'll be shared out and there will be conversations and input opportunities for that when we get to that point. So now I'm going to lead into the handful of questions that I got prior to this meeting, and a few of them are sort of rolled up into sort of categorical areas, and then we'll end with an opportunity for you guys to ask some more. So, what is the age and condition of the Pleasant View campus? So as I said, Pleasant View was built in the 50s and 60s with a large addition done in 1995, the general remodel in 2001, and substantial upgrades in 2015. They got a new roof membrane, new RTU, so HVAC units, as well as some electrical upgrades and interior finishes. The appraiser that we spoke to ranked it as an effective age at 20 years. So, roughly in terms of calendar years, not too different from this facility here. It's considered to be in above average condition. Also, highest and best use has been determined to be continued use as a school. So it's determined to be turnkey for any other school that would want to come in and continue school operations at that site. And like I alluded to, because it's been a part of the Jeffco facilities assets, it's been really well documented over its lifetime to understand, like, literally every single screw on a door that needs to be replaced or has been replaced has been documented and quantified. So that is actually really useful data for us to understand the investments that have been made, the areas that yet need to be addressed, and what that ultimately would cost. What is the educational adequacy of the Pleasant View campus as it is? So as I said before, it's got 20 classrooms, not including the specialized special spaces, which is 4 more than we have here at our current facility. In general, the rooms are smaller than we have here, except for the middle school space. All of the classrooms are perimeter, so they all have very large windows, great natural light, floor-to-ceiling windows there, and largely appear to need only minor modifications. So we would want to do some upgrades and some fresh paint, those types of things, but nothing substantial that would be required before we were able to move in and to use it. Overall, the storage space in the multi-use area is substantially greater. I would say that that's one of the greatest deficiencies here at this current site, is that while the classrooms are nice and relatively expansive, we have no place to put our stuff, and you can only keep adding so many sheds. So yes, so while this doesn't, factor in centrally in terms of what might be sort of directly understood to be an asset, it actually makes a really big difference in terms of school operations and sort of the daily logistics. Obviously, gymnasium, cafeteria, the stage, library media center, studio for art and music, and the computer lab are pretty much turnkey for enhanced programming there. No temp buildings currently exist or would be anticipated to be needed. The one outstanding investment we would need to make is the addition of those second toilets into each of the primary classrooms. They each currently only have one sort of toilet and sink area, and we would need to add a second to each of those spaces in order to maintain the appropriate ratio for childcare licensing. How will the debt service and operating costs compare? Like I alluded to, those big question marks on the numbers directly affect this. However, anecdotally, based upon the conversations we've had with the appraisers and real estate brokers, it is anticipated that we would actually lower our costs, both short and long term, by moving into this facility, of course, presuming that we sold or sublet this current facility. Currently, the market rates for bond refinance are more favorable than we locked in 2010. We're at almost a 6% for the loan in 2010. And we would also anticipate a lower par amount, so a lower principal on a loan for purchase of Pleasant View. So all that to say that we expect both principal and interest over the long term to be lower. We are doing some additional data gathering to get an idea of ongoing operational costs, utilities, janitorial service, snow removal, grounds maintenance, those types of things, so that we understand operationally what that investment would mean. And any of the purchase services that we have here that are multiplied based upon FTE would remain roughly the same, because our enrollment would remain roughly the same. Which is the segue to, would our enrollment increase, and would we welcome the Pleasant View families that have been displaced because the school shut down? So the ultimate capacity of the Pleasant View campus is actually quantified at 460 students based upon the district's assessment. That's a little cozier than we anticipate it needing to be. And based upon our utilization or our projected utilization of the classrooms and the seats available, we think that the site would afford about the same size of community as we have presently, and really would then accommodate the projected increase to the maximum size of our enrollment that we've always held for this current facility in that Pleasant View site. We're projecting around 320 for next year. Our long-term models have us up to 375 FTE in the 21-22 school year. So that's 3 to 4% year-over-year average growth, which is what we've seen historically the past several years. So the new campus wouldn't create new net space. It would allow us to enroll to maximum capacity of our existing programs, just like we anticipated doing here all along. Relative to inviting the Pleasant View families into our community, we would have open choice enrollment just as we always have for any interested families. That same application process would be followed, and obviously district process and procedures would dictate what that looks like, just as it does here. What are any of the known downsides or concerns with the site? So some dated interior finishes. It has some character. It looks a lot more like a traditional elementary middle school, versus a new construction. It doesn't have sort of that open concept feel like some of the spaces in the newer schools do. However, it is seemingly a very solidly built, nice, welcoming feeling campus. They've done quite substantial ADA compliance upgrades. It is a 2-story school. They've put in an elevator. They've done, doorway widening, those types of things to assure that they're sort of keeping pace with new upgrades as they are required. We would hope to upgrade the outdoor areas, like I spoke to earlier. Second toilets needed for primary. And then there are 2 sinks that were found to have lead levels above what is considered to be acceptable. So this would be above the actionable threshold based on EPA levels. So we would want to do additional testing and due diligence to understand what that looked like and to ultimately be able to mitigate that. This was in the art sink, and in the kitchen dishwashing sink is where it was found to be higher than the threshold that's considered acceptable. So we will do some additional investigation there. Can we take our solar with us? I wish it were that easy. The way that we brought solar to Free Horizon was through a power purchase agreement. So ultimately, we didn't have to front the capital or the expense to acquire the array. We had a third-party financier come in and do the construction. They actually own the array, and then the building corporation leases our roof space to them. We buy the solar energy back from that. So that's their way of investment, sort of guaranteeing their income based upon the fixed rate at which we buy back the kilowatt hours. But ultimately, that's sort of locked in with the building. So presumably, we would be able to reassign that PPA lease to whomever came into our space. That wouldn't preclude us from doing the same thing at Pleasant View, though. It's got a nice new EPDM roof membrane. It's got a flat roof with a big open solar window. So if that's ultimately what the school wanted to do, we could just do it all again. So those are the summary of the questions that were posed to me ahead of the meeting, and I'd like to open it up to any other questions that come in. Obviously, Krista, our principal, is here. We've got multiple board members. Could you guys raise your hand if you are a board of directors member? Yep, so we've got Jennifer Stickle, our president, Lisa Cernick, our reluctant secretary, Jennifer, excuse me, Jill Jennifer Fricker, who is our vice president. We have Roger Poole, who is our backup to the secretary member at large, and then our 2 staff liaisons, Kristen Shadowlight and Casey Stalker. And we also, I don't think, have our facilities committee representative here. But we do have our facilities manager here, yes, Sean Goins, and obviously, Megan Wells, our director of operations. So all of these people will be instrumental in the decision making and the evaluation that goes into the next phase. So with no further ado, do you want to just raise your hand after you state and then you can state your name, share your question, and remain respectful of time. And then this, again, is the form that I'll leave open so that either if you aren't comfortable sharing tonight or something comes to you at 2 a.m. tomorrow, pull that up and document it there, and I'll get back with you shortly.
We will need you to use the microphone. It isn't to amplify the sound, but so that our folks watching online can hear the questions. And it is being recorded so that families can watch at a later time if needed. So, opening the floor to questions.
Jess Kirshner. My question is basically there was a hailstorm that hit that area pretty hard a week ago. I'm not sure if you knew about that, Beth, but has the roof been inspected since that time?
That is a good question. This is going to be awkward. I do not know. And in fact, I know that we actually, Free Horizon, so we have our property insurance through the district and submitted a claim for some of the damage that we incurred here on site. So my guess is that same evaluation has been done. Speculation. But that's certainly something that in the inspection and sort of due diligence process we'd have to evaluate. I can tell you our actual roof membrane doesn't seem to be damaged, nor were the solar panels, which was crazy because it was terrible here. So, to be determined.
Asaf Wunsch. Really, maybe interesting question. Do you know if we're the only ones in the game in terms of trying to buy that place? Is anybody else trying to get in?
So the question was, are we the only ones who have kind of thrown our hat in the ring? I don't know. We have reason to believe that there may be other interested parties, and I know that there have been discussions at other sort of charter leadership forums that have indicated that there may be other people who are considering it. There are obviously some rate limiters for prospective charter schools beyond just what the real estate transaction would be. If you're an interested charter, you're a new charter, you would need to go submit your application, have approval by the Jeffco Board of Education. There are many hoops to jump through before you got to the point where presumably you would be ready to engage with a site of that size. But that doesn't mean that that's not a possibility. So it's something we're trying to kind of keep our ear to the ground on. I think we are early enough in the process that that gives us somewhat of an advantage, but it's an unknown.
Jess Kirshner again, kind of a follow-up question to that. Are there any other locations that Jefferson County has deemed that are available?
The question was any other locations that are available. The only other sort of surplus property that would be analogous to Pleasant View is the Zerger campus, way far up north. And just to sort of frame that, Free Horizon wasn't looking to move. And so, understanding that we always had a facilities master plan and a vision that realized all of those elements and aspects here, and in fact, all the due diligence and the estimates and everything that we've done here have always been with the intent of realizing the envision here. This was just whoa, hey, look at this opportunity that it would not make sense not to pursue. So we would be remiss if we didn't evaluate the Pleasant View campus. So short answer is no, we're not aware of any. We also don't anticipate there being any other coming online based upon the district's facilities master plan and some of the evaluations that they've done for site consolidations and sort of the grade adjustments. Those are really to optimize use of the existing facilities, but there aren't any others to my awareness that are anticipated to come available, and certainly not within sort of our standard catchment area.
Rachel Hernandez, and this is not really a specific question, but I was wondering if we could review a couple of the slides again, the one of the unknowns, and also the chart with or the information with the bond and the bond rates and things like that. Okay. Just kind of look at it again.
Sure. Was there any specific area that you wanted more explanation on, or just to sit with it? Yeah. Yes, and we'll have the deck available after the fact too. But yeah, the net of it is so that the bond was basically $6.5 million in 2010, and again that includes the just over $1 million that was the construction loan for the 5,700 square foot expansion. Our annual debt service is sort of normalized, so it's averaged out over the amortization schedule at just shy of $500,000 every year. There are 23. Yep. So that our current 2040 maturation date. Okay. And then sorry, Jody, unknowns. Yeah, short list, big questions.
Hi, my name is Jody Salvati. So what he was saying about the other facilities, I guess more of like a reiteration than a question. Is it safe to say that we are interested in this property because it is 1.8 miles away and it has all these features that we don't have? We are not necessarily looking to relocate for any other reason. Correct? Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So this is in no regard a vote of no confidence for this current site. And in fact, this wasn't an active pursuit of an alternative location. This was, if your neighbor's house goes up for sale and you're like, that's a great deal and is twice the space and it has, I don't know, home theater and whatever, chef's kitchen, all the things that you've been pining after, and is attainable for a lower cost than it would take you to do that same level of improvement and build out at your current site, at your current home, you check it out. Current construction costs in Colorado for commercial properties average between $250 to $300 a square foot. It's obscene. So if we're looking at a differential of the square footage for the amenities that Pleasant View has compared to what Free Horizon would need to invest to realize those same amenities here, it's a $4.5 to $6 million investment here. Contrast that with the opportunity to theoretically get into Pleasant View at that same price point, if not a little bit lower. So we're not even talking about the immediacy of the ability to use those amenities, but potentially coming in at some substantial cost savings. Again, that's speculative at this point, but in terms of broad brush numbers that we've been anecdotally receiving, it seems like there's an opportunity not only to have those amenities, but to have them in a more cost-effective way. Fiduciary responsibility is absolutely at the forefront of every decision that's made for this school. This just happens to be something that makes sense to pursue based upon all those things that you ticked off. But no, this was not an active pursuit. This was sort of a passive like, hey, this is worth pursuing.
Me again, Jody. So I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of put what you're saying into like a more like layman's terms for parents to understand a little bit better. So can we expound upon, like, you were saying it has a cafeteria. So does it have like a full working kitchen, stoves, ovens, exciting things like that? Does it have in its gymnasium space, is like an auditorium with like pull-out chairs that we would all be able to have these awesome meetings in where we're not like sweating to death, we want to talk about fun stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so this is Cresta, the principal, for those of you watching at home. So one of the things that Beth and Sean, as well as Chris Weber, who just rolled off of our board, had the opportunity to do was tour Pleasant View. We toured with a member of the Jeffco Facilities Department, and I was expecting older, dilapidated, and that is not what we found. What we found was a very well-maintained, well-loved building. So the families, the administration, the staff that are in that building have done an amazing job of caring for it. It has, every classroom has windows. It's pretty amazing. There is a gymnasium that is a gymnasium, and yes, the walls open up to create that stage area for those performances. There's a backstage area for the children to get nervous and prepare to come on stage with. The kitchen, yes, it is fully outfitted. Whether or not all of that will stay with the building would be a point of negotiation, because the furniture, fixtures, yes, the FF&E, some of that, the desks, the chairs, the children are going to need those in their new schools that they're going to. So the students will be going between Welchester and Shelton, and so those schools will need some of the materials that are in that building. And so what remains, I don't know. That's part of the process. Yes, yes, yes. Right. And we could introduce all of that, and it would open other opportunities for us for lunch service, for example. Instead of it being prepared offsite and brought in, we could do our own lunch preparation, or we could contract with a lunch server organization that actually prepares it fresh here in or on that site. So we could have our talent show there. Oh goodness, that would be awesome. So there are just a lot of opportunities. You know I keep waiting for a gate to close. I keep waiting for a wall to present itself, and so far none have appeared. I was expecting to be disappointed when we toured. That's not what we found. We didn't find that anything was falling apart. We found that some of the colors would not be our palette that we would choose. Those are, again, that's the aesthetics that we can change. We can have some painting parties. I think that there's a lot of possibility. I think that in addition to the location being close, it's that educational adequacy component that we are doing an amazing job. Our PE teacher who has PE in an office room, she does an amazing job with it. We have some limitations. Our after school sports programs, we can never host. We don't have a basketball court. We don't have a track. We don't have an ability to host some of those things that we could do in that location. Not that anybody counted, but there are 60 parking spots at that location, and we have like 36 here. So I think in their lots, not counting the street parking and so forth. So I think that we weren't looking. Our board, our administration, we were not looking for an opportunity to move. When this decision came down the pike, there were several of us that kind of on the same day had this, I wonder, moment. And as we started asking questions and getting more information, again, there have been no barriers, there have been no walls, there have been no gates. There have been questions that have arisen, there have been some challenges, some unknowns, but nothing has told us, wow, this is a bad idea. So we continue to move forward in that process. I don't want to rush it. When I was asked what my ideal timeline is, I put it out there. My ideal timeline, we would be moving in the summer of 2018. So it would give us a year to do some of the other work in the other facility, and we would be moving over there the same year that we're also expanding our middle school to include 6th graders. So it would be kind of an and we could plan it very intentionally, allowing the children to come and help unpack boxes in the new spaces, have some scavenger hunts in the new building, to get to know the space, having some family opportunities to be invested as well. So I think that there's an intentional way that this can unfold. Whether everything will unfold in my ideal perfect world timeline, I don't know. I do know that I was here in the 2009-10 school year when we purchased this building, and we looked at absolutely every possibility in a 5-mile radius, from building, purchasing land and building from the ground up, to renovating, to trying to find, there were a couple of surplus Jeffco facilities at that point that Jeffco absolutely wasn't even willing to talk to us about. So I think that having gone through that process, I am very heartened by there are no borders and walls and gates closing in this process so far. So we'll see how it unfolds.
Hi, my name is Irina Kelly, and I noticed that size of rooms in the Pleasant View will be smaller. Does it mean that amount of kids will be less versus in Free Horizon? And if I can ask another question, you mentioned it's going to be 60 parking lots by a new school, so it means car line will be better.
So this is my disclaimer where I can't promise the car line situation. What I can tell you is that we would be working with the law enforcement agencies to help design what that would look like in the safest way possible. So we would do a lot of due diligence to make sure that that was as safe as possible. In terms of the classroom spaces, it would be The spaces are smaller than our current lower elementary classrooms, but larger than our current primary and upper elementary classrooms. So it's kind of in between those sizes. So perfectly adequate for the class sizes that we have now. I don't anticipate those changing. So it would still be approximately 30 children per class. The exception is primary. Those class sizes would be reduced slightly because that is based on square footage. You have to divide the number of square footage by the age level of the student, and that tells you how many children you can have in those environments. So we would anticipate that our primary classrooms would come in around 28 students, and they're currently 30.
Thanks. Craig Metrick. So as much as I love my preschooler, she has a kind of permanent bump on her head from falling down and walking into things. So when you said 2-story facility, I just I just pictured. Yeah, that's what I figured.
So by law, we actually can't have anybody who is under first grade on the second floor in their primary classrooms. So the primary classrooms and the specials classrooms are all on the first floor. And when we say it's 2-story, it's actually more of a split level. So the front of the school is on the ground level with the entrance, and then there is a stairway up, and the second level of the school is ground level with the playground. And so with the primary students, all of their classroom doors go directly to the outside so that they could get to the playground without having to navigate stairs. Also so this would be the primary classroom area, and our middle school would be in this area, and there's a garden courtyard in between. So they would have opportunities for gardening and doing outdoor works and so forth. Yes, excellent question though.
I'm Kim Canigal Winner. It's just a personal preference, but I was very excited to hear about this because my one worry about this site is the air pollution from the proximity of I-70 and the noise pollution as well. So I just wanted to support the move for that reason because I was happy about that. So.
Thank you. Yes, we would be set further away from I-70 as well as set back further from Colfax as well with this location. And the fact that it's in a neighborhood is a bonus.
I have 2 questions. I'm Diane Fox. I'm a parent of 2 kiddos here. One of mine is kind of a cart before the horse. I know that and that's fine. You can just say that. But I know that Pleasant View currently has a food pantry that serves not only the students in their school, but I think also community at large. Is that something that Free Horizon would consider maintaining and continuing with?
So yes, we would. That program is funded through the Golden Backpack Program. My understanding is that the Golden Backpack Program has reached an agreement with a local church in order to move that pantry to the local church. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't be willing to host that in the future if that were to be a need within the community.
So what does Free Horizon need from the community, from just regular parents? Are there things that we should be doing to help out with this process? Are there things to lighten the load on the administration and the board that folks could help with?
So Diane just volunteered to make this happen. Yeah, I know. You know, the question really, what can the community do to help support this process? Stay tuned, I think, is the short of it. Right now, the sort of transactional business evaluation pieces are really the short-term focus. And in order to prepare our understanding of what the sort of logistical needs and demands will look like, both from short-term needs and long-term needs, we need to get those initial pieces pinned down primarily with the district first. Our discussion will be continuing with the district facilities and legal team. You know, ultimately, they should have the decision-making authority to engage in a real estate transaction, but there's the possibility that the Board of Education is involved as well, or the Jeffco Board of Directors, excuse me. So obviously we need to understand sort of who has that decision-making authority and what sort of considerations they will be looking to us to provide for them before we can understand what those deals will look like, the terms, the timelines, all of those things. And as soon as we've got some of those big picture pieces nailed down, then I think we will absolutely be coming forward to the community. And like Krista alluded to, if we have box up move days and paint days and, you know, campus beautification day every weekend, there will be opportunity. And I promise you, no matter what your skill set or desires or affinities are, there will probably be an opportunity to apply that. So there will be. Thanks for a bit of that softball, but we don't know exactly what that looks like just yet. I did, obviously put up a lot of the community committees that help evaluate and drive some of these. And so, as always, those are an opportunity to be engaged in a really meaningful way for the decision making that occurs on behalf of the school. So I would just put that back out as a way that you can get involved as well.
Also, make sure that all of your contact information is updated in Jeffco Connect so that if we send out an email saying, hey, on the first day of school, go to a different place, you get that message. So hopefully that wouldn't be the first communication, but make sure that that is updated so that you can receive the information. Sierra, did you have a question? I saw you raise your hand.
I don't want to do my grades. Sierra, and I had a question. Are we renovating the classrooms besides painting?
So there may be a need to adjust some of the flooring because in our Montessori classrooms, typically we have a carpeted area and a tiled area. Most of the classrooms currently in Pleasant View are either all tile or all carpet. And so, yes, that would probably be one of the things that we would look to adjust. We would likely start with primary because they have a greater need for a tile area that can easily be cleaned up, and whether we would do all of that before we moved in or kind of do a phased approach with some of that, depending on how new the carpet is and how worn it is, we would want to make sure that it makes sense from that standpoint as well. In terms of other renovations, there's not much that's needed other than painting. Most of the classrooms are just big rectangles. They're not funky shaped. They have windows, they have doors, and the doors to the classroom have windows. The biggest difference that I think you'll notice is that because the building was built quite a while ago, the ceilings are a little lower.
Hi, I'm Rachel Duncan. I just wanted to mention another really cool thing about the location is its bikeability. 10th Avenue, if you know, it's one way, but they have really nice bike lanes coming down to the school. So if you live on this side of Golden, you can bike around the Taj and go straight down into Pleasant View really easily. And it's harder to get here on a bike and not as safe. So it's just a really cool thing about the neighborhood. And City of Golden's planning new bike lanes going down South Golden Road and Colfax as well in their city planning. So that's another bonus to get to school on your bike.
Other questions?
So I actually would have a question for you guys. Because we will obviously have pretty rapid fire updates and information to share out to the community, we are going to be looking to you to inform the best way to disseminate that information to make it effective and useful communications out to the community, because we really want this to be a shared understanding and a process that everyone feels informed and comfortable with. So again, make sure your contact information is up to date in Jeffco Connect, but also if you could just help be ambassadors and information disseminators and take this and make sure that the people that you're connected with have that same level of factual information, and then encourage them to share that out. If there are additional questions or uncertainties, please reinforce that reaching back out to us to seek those answers would really be appreciated, so that we can make sure that everybody's got that clarity and understanding as we move forward. And that's all I've got. Oh.
Hi, Michelle Nordwald, and perhaps a segue off of your point there, Beth. Are you getting any negative feedback from the FHM community? I've only heard positive things, but as far as being ambassadors, are there things that we could help address specifically?
I haven't heard anything negative. I think that's been more questions, wanting to make sure that we are doing the financial due diligence, that the timelines that we are trying to establish are reasonable and support best in the best way possible the students' needs too. I think that it's, if you've ever had children and moved to a new home, this is very much like that. So having children understand that we would be taking all of our things, we would be setting up our classroom just in a new space. And the cool thing is that we take our entire community with us as well. But we would want to do that with great intention and care, because for some children, they've never moved homes and this will be their first time moving somewhere. And so they will have a lot of questions, and some of them will have some anxiety and some I don't know, a lot of uncertainty. So we'll want to make that do that with care and compassion as well. So talking about making comments regarding the... Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, what Roger, our board member, was referring to is making sure that as we have some excitement about this possibility, but understand that the community who are in Pleasant View, they are grieving the loss of their school and their community as they have known it. And as I said, as we were touring that facility, it was 100% clear to us that it has been a well-loved and well-cared-for facility, which means that the people inside have likely also been well-loved and well-cared-for. And they've built intentionally a very strong community in that school and in that neighborhood. And they are powerless against this decision that has been made. And so we need to be very sensitive and careful and caring toward the members of the Pleasant View community as well. I think that I'm under no assumption that they're automatically going to want to come to Free Horizon because we happen to be moving into the same building. Just like our building doesn't make our community, the same is true over there, that just because it's still the same building, it's not going to be the same community when we move in. And as lovely as our community is, I believe that the majority of the families in that area who believe that Montessori would be the best fit for their children, they've likely already applied to be here. And so while we will welcome them to participate in that choice enrollment program and we want to be connected within the neighborhood and community, I also don't want there to be an assumption that we're the big best thing that's coming into the neighborhood either, because what they have right now in the community that is coming to an end is also very special. Is that what you had in mind?
Okay. There was another question.
Hello, this is Michel Setre. So I'm assuming you guys been talking a lot to Jeffco. Are they pretty positive about it? And but also as far as dates, we're getting really close to the summer. Moving in this year for the next year would be really short. Are they pushing? Because keeping a facility empty for a year is not cheap, and it's not. And I don't know, how it would work. But are they trying to? If this would work, are they going to push us to try to move before the summer? I mean, before summer ends, or for Christmas, or is that going to be like an issue for us? I mean, moving like in the middle of the school year might be kind of I don't know, not necessarily the best solution, but.
No, that's a fair question. Don't cancel your Christmas plans or anything yet. Just that's not the expectation. I mean, to your question specifically about sort of the district's perspective and the way that they've communicated, they haven't yet. Yes, obviously, it would be theoretically in their best interest not to have to power down or winterize or mothball a building, because that has an expense associated with it, as well as any potential lost revenues for its current use. So we can speculate that they would be desirous of something that were more fast on our front, but they haven't articulated that yet. In fact, the Board of Ed just voted to declare it surplus about 2 weeks ago. So I think they are really at the point where that was the first sort of procedural step that they had to take legally before they could really even start to evaluate what those other prospects were. So I think that they are really at that beginning part of their own evaluations and sort of determination of their ideal scenario. So we are well positioned to be able to have that conversation with them now as they're evaluating it, so that hopefully we can come to something that's in a mutual best interest standpoint. Yeah, if it were this summer, that would be crazy fast. But if I've learned anything, is not to underestimate the Free Horizon community. And if ultimately that's what it came down to, we would communicate that out and evaluate what that looked like. But kind of to Cresta's ideal scenario, in her mind, we'll let her speak to her mind.
I would also just like to say that in speaking with folks at the district, the facilities personnel, their view is that our kids are Jeffco kids. So their view is that when the Board of Education approves a charter, those students become Jeffco kids, and they are charged with assuring that all of our Jefferson County public school students are in a safe and healthy learning environment. I don't think that we will be pushed. I feel like this is really a cooperative effort. The conversations so far have been very much, let's figure out what's going to be collaborative to our mutual benefit. Of course, the district wants to make money on this. And of course, we want a good deal on this as well. And I think that we can have it both ways. I really do. And I feel like we can come to a win-win that allows our community to have the facility that we would like to have at our full programmatic level, and provide that for our students in an enhanced way without compromising the ideals that Jeffco is coming to the table with. I don't want to push anything to happen faster than it needs to, nor do I want to drag my feet and miss any opportunities either. So it's kind of that sweet spot of moving forward at the pace that the process allows.
One more question. Irina Kelly. I was listening to you both, and I got thinking, you still don't know if it's another buyer interested in this facility, and did you personally get a good feedback that Free Horizon will be a good fit for that building, for that school? I mean, not that school, for Free Horizon to move to that building. That's what I want to ask.
So, just to clarify, you're asking if we feel like it would be a good move for us?
No, when you spoke to Jeff, if you got that good feeling that they're gonna let you know you guys will be a good fit for that area, for that building and everything.
Okay, so if Jeffco felt like we would be a good fit for the area, I don't know that they spoke specifically to that, but I think that what we did hear is that it would be considered a positive thing if it could continue to operate as a school and the heart of the community.
Yeah, I would say that again too. What we learned through the refinance endeavors that we went through last fall is really that we are an attractive investment as an organization who's been really responsible with our resources and our finances. And so I think from the district standpoint, we are a strong candidate, both from a business standpoint as well as, again, that highest and best use to come in and continue to use that facility as it was designed and intended and cultivated throughout its lifespan. So from a business standpoint and from a use standpoint, I think that their takeaway was definitely that they would like to see that move forward, and we are as strong of a candidate as exists probably.
Chris Weber. I'm just curious, the relationship that we've worked so diligently with the Golden City Council and with the school resource officers that we've had here, how might that relationship be changing as we move into an unincorporated area?
Thanks. So Chris's question regarding our relationship with our local officials and our school resource officers through the Golden Police Department, which we do have really strong positive relationships with. Being unincorporated Jeffco, that would be a different sort of direct line relative to oversight. And it's our understanding, but this is more research that we would need to do, that we would be overseen primarily by the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department from a school resource officer standpoint. So obviously they've got caring and compassionate and competent officers within that organization as well. We would not obviously have a direct relationship with the Golden City Council, given that we wouldn't be directly under their ward jurisdiction like we are here. However, I don't see that that wouldn't mean that we wouldn't still invite Marjorie to come to our bike to school days and to our celebrations and those types of things. And, it's my understanding based upon direct conversations and meetings with the mayor and the Golden City Council is that, they sort of see Pleasant View as sort of a little sister. And so they've got that same sort of care and concern as a part of the greater Golden community. It's not just because there happens to be an artificial sort of boundary line that there's any sort of arm's length distance. So even though it's not a direct line from a oversight and sort of legal standpoint, I foresee us being able to adapt that relationship in new ways in the new facility.
The building is also located within the Golden High School articulation geographic area, and so the Golden PD and the City Council maintain relationships with all of the schools that are within that Golden High School articulation area because they have a vested interest to do so in that regard. So while they wouldn't have jurisdiction or any legal responsibility for us, I believe that we could continue with some of those relationships and make it positive because that Pleasant View is currently and will remain within the geographic boundaries of Golden High School's articulation area.
Specifically, Councilwoman Sarsha Sherris-Graves was at a Healthy Schools Coalition meeting that I was at Jefferson County Public Health, and this was right after the Board of Ed had declared closure for Pleasant View. And all she could talk about was her care and concern for the Pleasant View community and wanting to ensure that it was looked after and that all of those good initiatives that they had established in the Pleasant View school were continued and maintained for that community. And so, this was a really genuine, sincere, personal sort of commitment and connection that she felt based upon her relationship and understanding of that school, even again as sort of that little sister role that it's been to some of the Golden schools. But I suspect that would continue.
Sierra, I was wondering, would we keep our same teachers that we have here? I'm guessing we would, but
that's a good question. Yes, there's no reason that I'm aware of that teachers or sort of classroom arrangements would be changing.
In fact, I've already mapped out where people would be.
She has your cubby assigned.
The names would still be Upper L 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth, and the teachers would move with their classes, and the classes would remain intact. Of course, the exception is that you have new fourth years that come into upper elementary each year, and in lower elementary you have new first years that come in, and in primary we have new preschoolers that come in. So I think that yes, your class would remain the same, your teachers would remain the same. It'd be us just taking everything in this room and moving it to the new gym, everything in your classroom and moving it to the new room that's designated for your classroom. It's an excellent question.
We wouldn't move all this stuff to the new gym because we wouldn't need it.
No, we wouldn't need it all. But there's a storage room attached to the new gym, and you know what else is in that gym? A drinking fountain and bathrooms. Yes. There are a lot more bathrooms and more exterior doors. There's more of just about everything. Other questions, wonderings?
My name is James Himes, and is there any possibility of a dual campus system where we'd stay here and move over there and maybe expand classes or even into high school as a Montessori group, since there's no real high school Montessori groups except for that one?
So in terms of that, I think that one of the things we have to remember is that education is a supply and demand system. And we are in a county that is rich with Montessori options, including a high school option that they currently accept new students in every single year. And when our board of directors back in 2008-9 school year and 9-10 school year, those 2 years that they were looking at the facilities question and when we purchased this facility, that was one of the things that we discussed. We had many town hall meetings and community forums where we asked the community, what do you want to be when you grow up? And overwhelmingly, the feedback was preschool through 8th grade. I think that there are a number of reasons from kind of a longevity standpoint and a sustainability standpoint. I don't know that we have the demand based on our wait list status for 2 campuses for Free Horizon Montessori. it's one of the things that we have looked at. We've looked at the possibility of, for instance, maintaining this building as an early childhood center and doing other programs at the other facility. We've looked at doing kind of a dual program as well. And we really have to be realistic regarding what the demand in this general area is and how far people will come and travel. We happen to have another Montessori school about 7 miles south of us. We happen to have another Montessori school about 5 miles north of us, and a new Montessori school that will be opening next year about 10 miles east of us. And so I think that from a realistic standpoint, we need to really look at what we could bear, and I wouldn't want to overextend our finances in terms of not being able to support excellence within the programs that we already have. That is a big consideration for our finance committee and our board, making sure that any of the debt that we do incur, that we can continue to maintain those payments in a healthy way and still operate as a school in an effective way. Other questions?
Thank you again. Trust that together, Free Horizon. Thank you again for coming this evening. Just to reinforce that we trust Free Horizon will continue to work tirelessly to make our school an ideal place to learn and place to belong, irrespective of the physical location that we come together in a community. There's great opportunity here at this campus. There's great opportunity at Pleasant View, and I have every faith that we will create that community and that facility that we need it to be in either space. So thank you again. Again, just to reinforce, that form is open, so if you have additional questions, feel free to put them in there or reach out to me or any of the board members, Krista, and we will get you answers as best as we can and continue to share out updates as we have them. So thanks again.